Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back. This is how to build a dogfighting flight sim game in Unity 3D, video number 4. So in the last video we put some bullets together, we got them firing out of the gun, so now if we press the spacebar, this gun will fire. Unfortunately, at this point, if we actually successfully shoot the opponent, nothing's going to happen to him because he's not set up to explode when he gets shot yet. Also not set up to explode when he crashes, so we're going to put all of that functionality in right now. We want that to be able to happen for both the player and the opponent. So we're going to go into the player first, and we're going to add some colliders, and then we're going to add some scripts to those colliders to get all of this working. Now if you notice the colliders, these green boxes that are surrounding the edges of the object, there's a lot of them already in place from the templates we got from Unity, which is cool. A lot of the work has been done for most of the things you'd want to happen with a plane, except that none of these cause an explosion to occur at the moment, so we're going to add that functionality. However, we probably don't want to use any of the colliders that are already attached to this plane, because if we change their functionality in some way, for example if we toggle them on or off in certain cases, that could potentially wreak havoc on some of the scripts that Unity has written for us in this player controller already. Because we haven't looked through all of the code that's in here to see if it's going to interfere, these scripts might be needing these colliders to stay exactly the way they are the whole time. So what I would recommend is, instead of manipulating these, I would say you should probably just add a new collider. So I'm going to create empty here. I'm going to call it explosion sensor. Okay, and to that I'm going to add a new script called, what do we want to call this? I want to call this destroy aircraft. And just like we've seen before, I've already created that script in the past, so it's warning me that already exists. I'm going to use the existing copy instead. Destroy aircraft, and there it is. Okay, so this script has an explosion object that it's expecting. We'll dive into what this script does in a moment, but first I want to draw your attention to some really great explosion objects that you get for free from the Unity Asset Store. You actually get some explosions from Unity in the standard assets, but I generally don't like to use these ones because they're pretty processor intense. So if you go into standard assets, particle systems, prefabs, you do have some explosion objects here, but they kind of slow things down a lot of the time when I try and use these objects. They're very heavy. So I've found from looking through the asset store that there's some really great paid stuff. There's also this really great framework that's free called Detonator Explosion Framework. I really love this package from the asset store because it's got some amazing explosions in it. So any of these objects will create an explosion as you drop it into the scene. As a demo, let's take a quick look at one of these. I'll just grab the first one, dropped it right in front of my plane so we can see it happening. I'm going to hit play, and I'll drag it over. So that was a, whoops, turn the menu on. Okay, so you saw it happening there. That's kind of what it's going to look like. We could change the particle effects like we've done with the bullet, make some of the fire bigger or things like that. I'll let you play with that if you want to, but because this is just a prototype, we're not going to worry about that right now. What we are going to do is attach that explosion to the plane's script so that it knows when it's time to be destroyed. That's the explosion that's going to replace the plane. And we do that by using the destroy aircraft script that I created on the explosion sensor that we also just created. Now the explosion reference object is asking for an explosion prefab, and we've got all of these here to play with. I just grabbed the base one because that one's easy. Drop it in, and now this script is ready to reference that explosion when it's time for the plane to explode. So let's pop into the script here and see what's going on in here. It's a very simple script. We use the public flag to expose this in the inspector, just like we've done with the fire gun script. OnTriggerEnter is a very important function to be familiar with. Anytime you want to use a collider, any of these green boxes here, fire a notification in a script so that you can queue some kind of new functionality based on what's happening in your scene. Two objects run into each other, or you shoot a raycast through the middle of an object, and you want your script to know when that's happening so that you can fire the next thing that's supposed to happen. That's what OnTriggerEnter is for. What this says is that two colliders have just begun to overlap. Or a raycast and a collider have just begun to overlap. Either way, this OnTriggerEnter will fire as long as you have is trigger turned on your collider. So if you go into your collider object, notice in explosion sensor we actually don't have a collider yet. I created the object, but I didn't add a collider to it yet. So we are going to do that right now. Box collider. There we go. Now this box collider, it's pretty small so you can't see it yet. I'm actually going to size this up so that we can see what we're dealing with. There's the box collider. You see box colliders always have green edges, and we're going to resize this collider so that it's kind of the shape of the plane. We could create a big group of colliders so that it perfectly shapes to the plane, but we're roughing it in, so we're not going to worry about that too much right now. We're just going to kind of generically get the size somewhat in the right place. We're going to rotate. Let's rotate 45 degrees so we get a perfect angle here, and we're going to resize a little bit once more. Let's move this forward like so. There we go. Okay, one thing you want to watch out for here is the overlap between this collider and the other colliders that are already on the plane. If you notice, some of these colliders up here, there it is. This nose capsule is right on the edge of the nose of the plane. It's very important for your box collider, or whichever collider you use, to be ahead of the nose of the plane, because if this nose crashes into the ground before the box collider does, the box collider is the sensor that says whether the plane should explode. If this collider is back here, and the nose hits first, the nose is going to stop this collider from being able to sense the ground. It's not going to get there, so the plane will not explode. You want to make sure that the explosion sensor is leading the collider group so that it's the thing that gets set off as soon as the nose touches the ground or a plane or anything. So now that that's in position, we should be able to use this collider as a sensor, and the way we do that is by checking is trigger. Remember I mentioned OnTriggerEnter will only fire if is trigger is checked on, because that's the signifier that this green box is not a wall, it's a sensor. So when you check is trigger on, objects can penetrate the green box. They can go through it, and when they do, this will fire. If we leave this off, then this green box will actually act as a wall. Nothing will be able to penetrate it, just like any other collider in the scene. So is it a hard surface that you can't penetrate, or is it an invisible sensor net that you can penetrate, and when you do, you will receive a notification. That's what we want in this case. We want the notification. Okay, so we've got the explosion sensor. We are going to apply the same thing to the opponent's plane. So I'm going to dupe this and drag it onto the colliders for the aircraft AI. I'm going to zero out the transform to bring it over to the opponent plane. There it is, and you can see it needs some resizing because this guy is a lot bigger than the other guy. A little forward, just like before, and that should be decent. Now obviously the collider is not matching up perfectly with the plane. I'm not that concerned about that right now. If you were to shoot into this empty space next to the plane, you will destroy the plane. That's potentially a problem for a complete game, but this is a prototype, and the way to fix that is to, instead of using one box collider, use a bunch of colliders that are smaller. Use like a capsule here and another one here, the same way that Unity did to set up all of these, except make your own. You can copy what they did here, and you would, in that case, you would just need to have a script attached to each of them so that they each fire the destroy aircraft functionality when the sensor is penetrated. Okay, so now let's go back into this destroy aircraft script and we'll double check what's going on here once we fire OnTriggerEnter. If your plane crashes into anything in the scene, this functionality is going to get executed. Now we're going to mostly ignore this line right here, but basically what we're doing here is specifying exceptions to the rule. Most of the time your plane is going to explode when it hits just about anything, but we'll find as we're creating the AI in the next few videos that there are exceptions to that. There are certain things that we don't want to cause the plane to be destroyed, but for the most part the ground, the opponent plane, or bullets, any of those hitting the plane, those are all going to get through to this code here. And what this code is saying is, let's bring the explosion object into the scene in the exact position and rotation of the plane itself, and then we'll destroy the plane object so that there's nothing left in its place except that explosion. That's as simple as it needs to be. Okay, so now that that's in place, we should be able to crash the plane. Let's see if it works. So one thing that you'll probably want to edit, if you noticed right as I crashed the plane, the camera in Unity's template is set up automatically to switch to another plane if the current plane is destroyed, and we don't really want that to happen. I believe that's a setting they have in AutoCam, but I'm not sure. Let's see if we can find it here. So in original scene, cameras, jet camera rig is the camera rig that they're using to follow the plane. Here we go, AutoCam, we have, I believe it's the auto target player property of this component. If I uncheck that, I believe the camera will stay attached to the player the entire time. Let's find out. Lift and that's what we're looking for. Okay, so that's explosions. When we have this in place for both the player and the opponent, it should work in either case. So let's actually test it one more time. This time, instead of crashing ourselves, let's see if the same functionality we just built allows us to shoot down the opponent. I'm going to hit the air brakes a little bit, which in this project I've mapped to the Q key, which Unity allows you to do automatically. All I did was change the key to map it to. So right behind the opponent, let's see if I can shoot him down. There we go. Alright, so it works. We can crash, we can shoot each other. The basic functionality of a dogfight is all in place, except we need a little bit more. We need some a better AI on this opponent plane. We saw in the beginning how the opponent has a track that he's going to be following just by default, but that's not good enough for a dogfight sim. We want the opponent to be able to chase us and shoot at us. So that's the last part that we're going to cover in the last two videos. So stick around, it's going to be fun.